Hello again everyone, welcome back to the channel, Comic here, and today we will be looking at the best places to start with X-Men. Now, the X-Men are a group of characters who have quite an extensive history, and it can be really confusing to jump into their comics, especially if you have no idea where to start. And even still, there's really no good place to start with them, unfortunately. You just kinda have to pick one of the better jumping on points and then hope you kind of figure out from there. This list is exclusively starting points. It's not like top 10 X-Men stories or anything like that or whatever, so it is kind of a shorter list again, but here they are. First up, we have Ultimate X-Men. This one got a little bit of flack for how it handled some of the subject matter a little early on. I think the story itself is just okay. I would agree that it's a good introduction to the X-Men. It tells you everything you need to know about them. It does have a very large cast of characters, a lot of fan favorites, and this series is relatively easy to follow. Unlike other X books, there is just the Ultimate X-Men line. Eventually it does kind of splinter off into other titles, but there's really no other Ultimate X-Men book. And then whenever this series does end, it becomes Ultimate Comics, Ultimate X-Men, and but it's still one title, if that makes sense. So that one will be a good modern version of the X-Men, although it's not necessarily the best story in general. But it is a good place to start though, and if you like the movies, it's very similar tonally. And next up, we have X-Men First Class. These are modern retellings of the original adventures of the original X-Men team. You have your original 5 with Iceman, Beast, Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Angel. These are new stories. It's not like they redid any of the artwork or anything. It's inspired by the old team, but they are modern retellings of the story. They're not canon with any X book. They don't change the past or anything. They're literally just kind of for those who were fans of the original team. These stories are okay in general. If you like this team and you like the chemistry, they usually handle the balance really well. There are several different First Class series. I want to say there are 2 miniseries or so, and then it got a short ongoing. So even this can be kind of hard to pick up, but they typically don't follow any sort of coherent story. For the most part, you can read each volume as its own standalone thing. And even these aren't even the best places to necessarily start. It doesn't kind of show how the team comes to form, but they are kind of smaller scale, bite-sized chunks with a limited cast, and so it's an easier jumping on point rather than showing you how the team actually came together. The X-Men Season 1 storyline is also going to be good. It also has the original cast. I actually don't have a copy to show you guys, but once again it kind of falls much in the same vein as First Class. So if you like that, you have other places to go, but there are still some better ones, at least in my opinion. Righty, next up is X-Men God Loves, Man Kills. This also isn't necessarily the best place to start with the team, but it's a major story for them. It's one of the best, and it goes into a lot about Wolverine as a character. Wolverine's one of the more popular X-Men, undoubtedly, and the movies focused a lot on him, and X2, which is still considered one of the better X-Men movies to this day, pulls a lot from this book. It is a bit older, as you can kind of see there, but it's got a great cast of characters. You kind of get a little bit of everyone in there. It is great. This was written in an era when the X-Men served kind of to like draw parallels for racism and everything. Chris Claremont was big on that, and this story really dives into it. So if you like a lot of like deeper meaning in comics, this one will be great. And then it is still a standalone story. It might help to know who each character is beforehand, but for the most part you can just pick it up, read it, and then call it there. There is a little bit more before, and there is definitely some stuff after, but for the most part, God Loves, Man Kills will be a great, like, just one-off. And while there are better places to start with the X-Men, there are definitely far worse. So if you want, like, some nice classic feeling X-books, that would be a good one to start with. Next up, we have a lesser-known book with X-Men First to Last. This one is great because you see the original 5 X-Men kind of interact with the modern present-day team. This one isn't too old. I'm not sure exactly when it was written, but this is actually like a really solid X-Men story in general. After a group called the Evolutionaries shows up and declares mutants as superior to humans, the X-Men must, stop them from wiping out all of humanity. This really goes into like a lot of the why they fight alongside humans and while they'll always defend humans even though they usually shut them out. And so it's a great look at the X-Men and like a lot of the why they do what they do. It's also got a great cast of characters. Like I said, you have the new team and everyone involved in that. You have the old team and everyone involved in that. So if you're a fan of the classic X-Men stuff, you should like this. And if you're a fan of the modern X-Men stuff, you should really enjoy this as well. This actually kicked off the like newer, modern, just X-Men series, and it did a pretty good job. So because it itself was a starter, you can really just kind of jump in. Again, you're gonna be a little lost on who some people are and how they got there, but for the most part it should be really easy to follow. And lastly, my favorite place to recommend that people start with the X-Men is Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men. It's got a great lineup, it's got phenomenal artwork. Again, like, you're kind of expected to know a little bit about who the characters are already, but you have Wolverine, Cyclops, Beast, Kitty Pryde, and Emma Frost as the main team. Eventually the roster does kind of expand, but for the most part he keeps it at those core 5. If you guys are any fan of the first Avengers movie or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you should really enjoy this one as well. Joss Whedon kind of has his own style, and he definitely brings it in X-Men here. He also launched the original Astonishing X-Men line, and this ran for 4 volumes. I want to say around like 24 issues. I think he wrote it for the first 2 years. And the whole thing is great. This is just volume 1 here. There is a reprint that has the first 2 now. I think that's actually the only way you can get the book. If you're ordering from a comic shop or whatever, like, I think you have to get the Ultimate Edition now. But it does come with the first 2 volumes, so at least there's that. What makes this such a good jumping on point is it is a fresh start in general. The story really only kind of builds from here on, and it is, like, modern. It's Whedon, so he kind of pays some, like, nice homage to the original stuff, but it still feels like an updated take on the X-Men. He really kind of brought new life into the franchise, and so, yeah, this is... If I had to recommend anyone start reading X-Men, this is usually what I'd throw at them first. And that's everything.